So we are back to Pirkei Avos. It's been a couple of weeks break, and we are doing Mishnah 9 in the chapter 2. And it's a little bit of a switch. Until now, we had gone chronologically from Moshe all the way down. We took us to actually Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, who is the person who he compiled the Mishnah. And then we went back briefly to Hillel and Shammai to a number of things that Hillel had said. And Hillel was actually 4 or 5 generations before Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. And now we are going to make a little switch and go back again a couple of generations. And that is to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is he he is a descendant. He's not a descendant, but he's a disciple of Hillel and Shammai, mainly Hillel, and he is going to be the one who receives the tradition from them. But he was not the next in line to be the Nasi. He actually is a leader at one point, in between one of the descendants of Hillel and Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, but it was later. He actually lived during the last part of the Second Temple and was in the time of the destruction as well. And there are a number of stories about him during that time. One of the most famous stories about him was that right before the destruction of the Second Temple, at that time there was a lot of strife within the Jewish community itself. They remember there was a siege of Yerushalayim, and there was a group of what they call them zealots, but people who wanted to go out and fight, and they ended up burning a lot of the storage, the food that they had stored. They had a lot of food stored, and it kind of forced the hand of the Jews inside that they should go out and fight. And anyway, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was able to sneak out. He had to, and they wouldn't let anybody out, but he was able to get out by pretending that he had died. And he gets out of they carry him out of the city, and he goes to the Roman camp, and he meets Vespasian, and he greets him as the new emperor. And Vespasian had not yet known that he was going to be the new Caesar. And just as he's talking to him, a messenger comes and tells him, "Oh, from Rome, that the Caesar had died, and Vespasian was appointed as the new Caesar." And he wanted to reward Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai for being the first to tell him. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai realized that he couldn't save everything, but he did save a couple of things. And one of the things he was able to do was to get safe passage to reestablish in the city of Yavne, to reestablish that as the center of Jewish life and to be the place where the sages would meet, and the Sanhedrin, the court, etc. And in a sense, he is credited with preserving the Jewish way of life that the Romans were going to ultimately destroy. So he says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai kibel me Hillel and Shammai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he received the tradition from Hillel and Shammai. Hu haya omer, he used to say, Im lamadta Torah harbe. If you learn a lot of Torah, al tachzik tova la'atzmecha. Don't give yourself a lot of credit for that. Ki lechach notzarta. That's what you were created for. You're just doing your job. Don't think that you're anything. So you're doing something special. You're just doing what you're supposed to. And just in a general sense, this is a good message for people. Some people like to take credit for lots of things they do, and generally, when a person is just doing their things that is expected of you, don't make yourself into a big deal to say, well, look how great I am. You're just basically doing the basics that any person should do. And unfortunately, what has happened, of course, is that nowadays a lot of people don't do what they should do. So anybody who's a nice person, you get credit for doing anything basic, because you have so many people, unfortunately, who don't know how to conduct themselves. And I'm not just talking about in Jewish life, but it's just in general. So, but really, there are certain basic standards that we are expected to do, and we shouldn't be bragging about the fact that we are doing that. So the the explanations for this this idea that he's bringing forth is a number of different angles, and Rashi points out that the person should not take credit for saying, "Oh, look how much I've learned, and therefore people should be giving me honor, etc." And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai himself was an outstanding sage, and he was someone who was known as being knowledge of all aspects of the Torah and the Talmud and the Mishnah, etc., and basically everything that we could possibly think of in terms of Torah knowledge, he already had accomplished. He had studied, and he's saying that. So it's one thing if a guy like me says that, but if someone like Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai says, "Don't take credit, you're just doing what you're supposed to," then it has a lot more credence. The Gemara actually brings down a whole thing about all the different areas that he was expert in. Also, the Gemara also brings down another idea here that in terms of what we were created for this, the idea being that the Gemara says that in the beginning of creation, we read about Vayhi Erev, Vayhi Boker Yom Hashishi, right? All the days of creation that are listed in the Torah. And the Medrash over there says that when Hashem created the world, he made a condition with creation. That the condition was that if the Jewish people accept the Torah on Mount Sinai on the sixth day of Sivan, that's the Yom Hashishi, the sixth day, then the world will be able to sustain, and the world will continue to exist. If the Jewish people would refuse to receive the Torah, then there's no point in having the world. And because Torah, remember, preceded creation. So therefore, we have an obligation. We were created in order to be able to study Torah, because that's what is necessary for the world. Without Torah, there's no purpose in the world. Rabbeinu Yonah points out also that when it comes to learning, the vast amount of depth and breadth of Torah is beyond our comprehension. So no matter how great any person is, you're only at the beginning. You see pictures. If you had 1,000 miles, or whatever distance you want to do, you're only at the beginning. He says you've done 1,000th of what there is to learn, and you're not even at the middle. You're nowhere. You're just at the beginning, and we can't even fathom how deep it is. We also know an idea that the more you know how much you don't know, right? So generally speaking, people who don't know, and they know a little bit, they say a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, because when a person has a little bit of knowledge, they think, "Oh, look how much I know," and they have a tendency to act in a manner of like they know everything. Whereas people who really know, they know how much they don't know, and realize that there's so much more, and are more likely to be humble about it. Rabbeinu Yonah also points out that, again, the creation of the world from nothing, when God created it, we call Yesh Me'ayin, from there was nothing existed, and it was the purpose was to observe the Torah, and therefore it's another reason not to take credit for it. And he gives a parable of someone who you borrow money from someone, you pay it back, right? So does the person have to thank you for paying back the loan that you owe him? He shouldn't have to thank you. And it may be nice to thank you, but really, you're just doing what you're supposed to. You haven't done anything out of in addition to what you're obligated to do. So therefore, this is the same idea that we're doing what we're obligated to do. Another important point that the Pharisee points out is, again, you think you know so much, you think you've done so much. Well, who are you comparing yourself to? You're comparing yourself to another person? Well, how do you know what capabilities that person has been given by God compared to you? You may have been given greater abilities. You were born smarter than someone else, and some people are smarter than others, but don't take credit for it. That's how God made you. So God made this other person with less abilities, and he gave you greater abilities. Are you using your abilities to their fullest extent? Because again, a smart person, that's a brilliant person. You have a person who's a genius. They don't have to work so hard to gain a lot of knowledge. The person who doesn't have that same level, they have to work a lot harder. So if they actually end up being equal, the person who was not as smart, that person gets a lot more credit because they really had to work for it and make it happen. The person who's the genius, they really didn't do anything. They spent 5 minutes and they got it. Big deal. So when we look at ourselves and we say, you know, maybe God gave me that ability, I shouldn't be taking credit for it. It's a God-given ability. Did you did you reach your own full potential and did you work as hard as you can? That other person, they're doing maybe a lot more than you are, and therefore we shouldn't be taking credit. And finally, the idea of another angle that's brought is that al tachzik tova la'atzmach, don't hold on to it for yourself, is also not just not just the idea of don't look at it as how taking a great credit for myself, but don't hold on to it for yourself. Don't just use it for your own thing, but help teach others. You have an obligation. If you know, you should be teaching others. The more you know, the more you're able to give to others. And therefore, don't keep it for yourself, but share it with everyone else as well. And we'll hold it there. Have a